Hello guys, and welcome back to Laravel Real World. I'm hoping you've enjoyed my last two videos, and also you've progressed with going through some of the things that I talked about in the last video. Now I've actually done quite a little bit of work um, behind the scenes because I've noticed my videos have been quite long, so I don't want to get you kind of bored because the videos are so long, and you fall asleep in lectures and that kind of stuff. So there's no reason why you won't fall asleep in my videos. So I'm going to try and get videos to be a little bit more shorter, try and get a bit more information in that shorter period without going over quite a long time. So I'm going to try and be doing a bit more work in the background and talk over very short topics, and then push you guys to actually do some of that work, so that then it's going to help you remember doing that work rather than, oh look, let's watch it and then you forget it. It's better to do it than not to. So yeah, let's get straight into it. So what I'm going to talk you through is what I've done. So what I've actually done is I fixed the issue with the interfaces from the last video, and let's go ahead and just review those. So what I've done is I've got my base interface, I've got my event interface. So in my base repository, I've updated now some of the code now to actually begin to work. So let's quickly talk through that. So the all method, self-explanatory. We're telling the model, let's go and fetch everything. It returns a collection. The find is going to return a model. The model is going to be the model we pass in when we call the repository. The create, we're passing an array of attributes, and that is going to return a model. We then just pass inside of there in the create the attributes. I'll talk you through the controller in just a moment. So in the update, again, the attributes, but this time I actually pass in the ID of the model. Then what I do, because we're newing up a model, but when we new up the model in the constructor, we don't know what model we should be fetching. So what we do is we just go and fetch that model, and then we set the model to the model we just fetched. And then what we do is, because this model has just been set, we can now use the update method, pass in those attributes, and away we go. Same principle for the delete. We pass in an integer ID, and we go and fetch that model, and then we delete that model. Really simple. In the event repository, I really haven't got anything specific at the moment for those to be used, but we will at some point be using those more often. New methods could be overriding the base repository method. We might want to introduce maybe a database transaction, because we've got quite a few relationships to resolve before that data gets inserted. So we will, as time goes on, go over that particular thing and start to use that. So that's kind of where we stand. Let's go to the controller. And basically now I've updated the controller. So we've got our index, which is the events all. We return the view and pass the events. Pretty simple. Simple Laravel stuff. We've got the create. We've got the store. So as you can see, I'm passing in the all. Now, although I'm passing in the all, let me really point out that we've got a store event request. We are validating the information that is going into there. Do not do request all without validation, because it can become quite an issue with security. So if we go to the store event, in store event is where our validation sits. Now there is also an authorize. So the authorize is to do with the gates. Now we will, well, more policies than gates, but we will be using that, but not just yet. So when we come to set up our user roles, we can check inside that request whether they are authorized to actually do that request. So we can check, okay, do they have the ability of their role to update an event, create event, those kind of things. So currently it's just set to true. Anyone can do it. Regardless of your role, anyone can do it. But we won't want to do that. Eventually, we will change that. Now to our rules. We've got name. I'm setting it to be required. I'm telling it has to be a string, a minimum of 3 characters, and a maximum of 60 characters. Those aren't necessary, but I think it's a good practice to get into to actually do that. Reason being is, you know, some silly user may come and go, let's blah, 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 really, really long titles, and it's not good. So I always like to set min max, but it's preference. You don't have to follow that particular practice, but I like to try to. I don't always, but I try to. Stream URL required and a string. I could theoretically, because we're going to be using iframes, we can't really, but you could at some point, maybe if you create some kind of dynamic method that will fetch the iframe structure, and all you need is the URL. So we could put URL, but in this case at the moment we're going to be sending an iframe, so we can't validate it as a URL because it won't be. Event start, it's going to be required string. We need it to be a date format, so we're expecting it to be year, month, day, hour, minute, seconds. Really simple stuff. So if we go back to our controller, once we create that event, we redirect to the route of index and we pass in with message, success, event created successfully. Really simple. Edit, again, we just go and edit the page. We pass in the event. We use route model binding to get that information. We then do the update. Again, we're using the store method. Now, with the store method, with update and create, now there could be an instance where you may, for example, have something unique, and you will run into, which we will do something like this later on because we're going to have slugs, and you know we need to make sure those slugs are unique. So not this particular moment we will run into that issue, but we will. But basically, with a store event, we need to make sure in our validation that we're excluding the current model when we're doing the update. The reason being is when you try to update and you've got a unique validation and you've not excluded the current model, it's going to throw you in there and say this already exists because it's not excluding it. So like I say, we'll run into that issue at a later stage, but for now, we won't. So we can use it. Again, passing in my model, and then we're just doing the update. Again, making sure you're doing validation when you're doing request all, and then we're passing the event ID. And then we redirect, again, with our message of success, event updated successfully. With our delete, again, we get in our event, passing the event ID, we're redirecting, and then we've got our message. Now, on that, let's go and check how I did my messages. So let's close this and this. We go down to our views, resources, views, admin, partials, messages. So what I did is I've combined my success with my error. So what I've done is I'm checking if there's any errors. If there's not, we continue. Then, okay, let's check, does the session have a success message? If it does, then we're going to display it. Else, we're just going to jump out of this particular partial. So that's pretty much it. If we go to jump to our forms, this is my index. I've updated the format now of the date. It's going to be in a date, month, year, hour, minute format. I've also created and updated the edit and destroy functionality. So we just simply, for the edit, we do root with admin events edit, passing the event. We use model binding and to actually for that to actually work. So you don't need to do, for example, like event array and then the event ID. So we don't need to do that because we can use the model binding for that. Then for the destroyer, very similar to the way the login, the logout functionality works in Laravel, we've got a anchor with the destroyer route passing the event, and then we do an on click. So the on click, it prevents default, and then what we do is we get the element by its ID. Now you'll notice here that I'm actually passing the event ID through the loop. Reason being, if you don't, and you simply just have it as destroyer form, when you press delete, it doesn't know which one to delete. So it's just going to delete like a random one. I've done that before quite regularly, not meaning to, but forgetting to add it. And then when someone in production deletes something, they're like, well, that deleted the wrong one. And yeah, it's caused a bit of a problem. So don't forget to do that. And then we've got the form. Again, you can see here the ID with the destroy form ID. Again, with our action of destroy with the event. And then we're doing the CSRF token and the method of delete. Very simple, very easy. Now, so what else do we want to discuss? Okay, so what I've also done is now I've actually put the admin panel behind a login. So if I try to go admin, slash events, I always get redirected back to the login. So at some point, we will do this based on your access rights. So currently, if we was to log in with any user, any person can get to the admin, which is obviously not what we want. But for now, this would do. So what we need to do now in this particular video is create a user seeder. So we don't have to keep creating and registering a user every time we want to reset data and that kind of stuff. So we're going to create a seeder, and then I'm going to show you some of the stuff I've actually done on the front end for the admin panel. So I've actually added a date time picker for the start date. And then what we're going to look at is actually how we're going to do the user relationship to that event. So let's crack on, shall we? So if we go to our routes, and we'll see how I did my admin, i.e. we can't get to it, just simply did a middleware using the auth and the web auth user type. So obviously you've got API, you've got web. So we're going with web because that's obviously what we're using. So let's go ahead and create the seeder. So PHP artisan make seeder, and then we're going to do a user table seeder. So we created that. Okay, great. So now let's go to our database, seeders, user. So we're going to do user, create, then we're going to do name. Sorry about the coughing. Name is, we're just going to use mine, is James. Email, we're just going to use, for now, admin at email.com. Now, to do your password, don't put a plain password in. It's just not going to work. And obviously for security reasons, it's not going to be very good. So Laravel has either the hash make, or you can also do bcrypt, if I spell it right. I like to use hash make. Could use bcrypt. Yeah, we'll just go with bcrypt. Sod it. So we're going to go password. Okay, it does that if I spell password right. Okay, great. So is that the only fields we need? So let's just double check. I think it is. We've got name, email, password. We don't need email verified app because we're not currently using the email verification system that Laravel has. So we can ignore that for now. Great. So we're going to import the user model. Great. And now we can go PHP artisan migrate fresh Oh, my typing is terrible today. Great, we've now that. So in theory, we should now be able to log in just like that. As long as I type in credentials correctly. Or not. What's going on here then? Admin email. Did I do... Okay. Just want to double check that that is working. Because bcrypt should work. I don't see why it should. It's either that I'm using it wrong. I'll be honest, I don't normally use bcrypt, so... No, what's going on? Did we get our user inserted? Let's check. No, that's why. So why did our user not get inserted? Oh, I know why. See, we figure these things out as we go along. So I'm being silly. I've created my table seeder, but I didn't tell Laravel to use it, did I? So we go this, and we go run, user table seeder class, and we import that. That should, am I doing that wrong? But method signature user 0. Again, I can't remember the top of my head then. Let's check the Laravel Docs. Like I said, good habit to get into. We all need it at some point. So let's go ahead and... I could have swore that was right, but hey ho. Seeder. Writing seeders. So what am I doing wrong? We've got the run. Oh, okay, I'm just calling run. That's not the correct way to do it. It's cool. I'm using the wrong one, so I'm trying to call its own itself. There we go. That should work now. So there we go. So let's check the DB now. Yeah, there we go. So, oops, didn't mean to do that. And we're in. Great. I've updated the admin panel now, so I've got rid of all the bits down the side that we don't need. And what I've also done is I've added, like I mentioned in the controllers, the add, the edit, delete. So let's go ahead and so you can actually see it working. So if we add, we do James, not that it really matters. URL, don't really matter because we're not currently doing it. And then this I've added in the back end. So we can actually select date time because HTML doesn't have a date time format, not at least that I'm aware of. There was one, but it got deprecated. I'm not sure why, but yeah, so now we can just simply go date time and we submit and its event is created. We've also got our message that we set up in the controller and that's it. So if we edit and we go James Hayes, we edit, it's there, and we can also delete. Simple. So let's go ahead and do what we're supposed to be doing. The other thing as well is that I've actually, down the bottom here, added now the logged in user. So we can actually see who's logged in. And I've also removed the log out. We'll probably remove the search at some point, but we'll see. Right, let's get ahead. And how are we going to introduce this relationship between the user and the event? So how do we know which user is hosting that event? That's what we want to do. So what we need to do is now we need to add a relationship field to this event. So there's a couple of ways to do this. Let's look at the Laravel docs. So you can do it quite a few ways, but there's one way that I generally tend to use, and we'll see that in a moment. So if we go up to here and we do, where is it? I don't know. I'm sure. No, it's not. A lie. Sorry. It's not in the relationships part. It's in the migration. And then we go foreign key constraints. So we can do the table unsigned big integer And then we can say it's going to be a foreign key, references to the ID on users. Now we can do that. Or a shorter syntax is this, which is what I like to use. So we're going to copy that. And then I want that to actually be the very first thing. So let's delete that. This is going to be user ID, and that's it. Now, if I recall rightly, we need to add users. So this is saying that we're going to use the users table, and the foreign key between the two tables is going to be the user ID. Great. So there is actually some more options we can do. We've also got the on update and on delete. Now on delete, essentially will be that if you delete the user, it will delete the event as well. I don't really like that. I don't really like doing on delete. I like to tidy stuff up a bit myself. This is more a database validation level. There's no right or wrong way. It's literally your preference. The reason I don't like to do this is two reasons. One, if we do accidentally delete a user and for whatever reason we didn't have validation or confirmation, boom, everything's gone. Now, to get around that, you could use soft deletes. Soft deletes won't delete the data from your database. It will just simply add the deleted at field and complete the data in which you press delete. Problem is, your data then sits in the database a lot. But you can also then fully delete that. But then you run into the same issue again of, you delete that, it deletes everything. But by that time, theoretically, if it's been a long period, you delete it. But personally, I don't really like to do that. I don't like to have such a limitation at a database level. I'd rather it at a software level that I can have control of. So we'll stick with that. Okay, great. So now what do we need to do? Well, we need to create a user repository so that we can grab all our users. When we create the event, we want to be able to select that user that's going to be linked to. Or from a front end perspective, when we get to it, if a signed in user wants to create an event, that will automatically obviously update that user ID. But from an admin perspective, we want to manually select that. Or there is another way, is you'd go to the user first, like maybe view a user, then you'd create, which would we could automatically update the user ID. But we're not doing it that way currently, so we'll do it this way. So we're going to create a user interface, which we don't need to, yes, we do need to extend, sorry. We need to extend the base. Why, oh, sorry. It's not extends, it implements, doesn't it? I'm being silly. Right. Great. So, okay, we've got all those. Now, we don't actually need these because we've already got it in the base. So we can, for now, just delete those. Okay, so I'm not actually extending it on there. Yeah, I don't know why I'm doing that. We don't actually need to extend the interface of an interface. I mean, we could, because we're using the base repository, which implements the base. I'll keep that as it is. Whether that's right, that's not for me to say. It's a preference, I suppose. If you've got, a comment on this, let me know. Am I doing it wrong? I don't think I am. I think we can do it this way. It's a valid way of doing it. This interface here is to implement anything to me that isn't going to suit every model. So I don't know, for whatever reason, we want to implement a method on an event that will scrape YouTube. Well, that's not going to be relevant to the user, is it? So to me, that I don't need to implement that base interface. That base interface is for general concepts that all those use. So again, I personally think this is correct. Whether that's right, tell me. Tell me your opinion. But yeah, let's not talk about it. Let's carry on. So now we're going to create our user repository. Now this extends the base. Okay, so we've got that now. Great. So now what we need to do is inside our controller, we're going to go to the event controller. And now what we're going to do, we're going to bring in our constructor, the user interface. We're going to do user interface. Naming convention, again, is probably, it's up to you really. Don't know if I spelled that right. It's just your preference. There is no wrong or answer on that. But yeah, so let's go with user interface. Then what we want to do is on the create, we actually need to pass in those users now. Now, you could do this in Vue.js, so we could do maybe like a autocomplete like field where we could search a user and it'll only fetch the user that we're searching for, performance. But I think what is probably the best way for now is if we grab all those users at a later stage, we will refactor and we'll do it in a much in an efficient way. I think the best bet is not me trying to go, yeah, this is the best way to do it. I think this is the best way to begin, and then from this perspective is then I talk you through the process of refactoring and that kind of stuff. So not necessarily I would do this way straight away, because I already know different. I know I should be making it more efficient, making it not load all users at the same time. So I know that, but for this perspective, I think we should do it, then refactor. So what we're going to do is we're going to go users. Oops, no, I did not mean to do that. User interface. Oh. Then what we're going to do is we're going to pass this into a compat, and we're going to send in the users. Great. So we now need to update our view. So if we go to the create, I'm going to copy this for now. We're going to do this. We're going to keep the label, and this is going to be user. We're going to delete the input, and we're going to do select class form group. Do that. We're going to do options. We're going to set the name of equal to user underscore ID. So if I don't know if you've noticed, with my naming conventions for my fields, I'm keeping it exactly the same as the column name. Reason being is because I'm sending request all, and then inside my store event, when I'm validating the columns, if they're different, I will get an error. Because obviously it can't match. So I'm keeping the exact same, because then that saves me less time needing to change the code to make sure that all the columns are matching up, even though the front end is different. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing that. So just be aware of that. Okay. So what's PhD? Well, we've already got a label, so that needs to be user underscore ID. And I don't have to, but I always give it an ID. Now, okay, great. So now we can do a for each. No, not for each. And end for each. And we're going to pass it the users as a user. Then this is going to be the user itself. And we're going to pass the name. And then the value is going to be the user ID. Now, what we need to make sure we do is set up the old. So to do that, we need to drop this down like this. And then we need to go if old user underscore ID and old user underscore ID is equal to the user ID, then we're going to simply go selected. And then we're going to do the end if. And now, if the form gets an error, it will repopulate all the data, and then you can fix the error, whatever the error is, whether it be required or it's not a string or something like that. So now we don't have to worry about the data going missing and having to re-enter everything again. Okay, great. So now what we need to do is update our edit. Go edit. What we can do is we can just simply copy the edit and we paste that right there. Right. We have to do something slightly different now for this edit, because what we need to do is also set the default value for the select. So I don't know why it pasted like that. Okay, so then what we need to do is we need to add a else if, and the else if will be if the user ID, oh, I'm missing the app, that's why it's playing up. Right, if the user ID is equal to the event underscore user ID, that will make this selected. And away we go. So now, as long as there's no old validation errors or anything like that, you know, any session data, then we will just make sure that's set to the default, the value that's set to the event. Great. So theoretically, oh, before I do that, I've missed one thing. We need to copy the users, and then we need to put it in the edit. So otherwise we'll get an error that they don't know what errors are, users are. So now we can come back, we refresh. Great, we go add. Oh, okay. So call to undefined method, app interfaces, user interface. I know why this is. Now, the reason that's happening is because I didn't set up the repository right. So let's go to the repository, because this is telling us that he doesn't know what the all method is. Now we get our all method from the base repository. So I can only think of one thing, is that for some reason the user repository is not communicating with the base repository. It is to a certain extent, but we're missing something. So let's go ahead and look. See if we go to repositories. Okay, so we know we're extending the base repository. So theoretically, we should be getting the all method. Now, we can think, well, how do we debug that? Well, one thing for starters is if we go and look at the event. Okay, so we know the constructor is expecting the model. If we go back to event, we pass the model. The parent construct, we pass the model. We're not doing that in the repository. We're not passing the model to the base. So hence, we don't know what all is because it doesn't reach that far. So we can do one of two things. We can just copy, or we can write it. I'm just going to copy, just a quickness. No, we don't want it to be the event. So we need to change that. Let's pull in that. We change this to user, and then we pass that user model to our base repository. So now we go back, we refresh. Great. And okay, so we're still not app interfaces. Oh, okay. I think I know what I did wrong now. I know what I'm doing wrong here. So how do we debug this? So actually I realized this is actually not talking about the repository, but actually the interface. So what we're saying is when the user interface is called and we're looking for the all, it doesn't know what it is. So again, let's go back to the base repository, but base interface. Okay, well, we know the interface. Okay, well, we know the user interface is empty for a reason. We go back to that. I can see what I'm doing wrong here. I hope you do too. And I should have spotted it straight away. I didn't set the file to be an interface. It's a class. Hence, it not finding a method. So we change this to an interface. See, we all make mistakes. It's all part of the learning process. We don't need to use any of those. Now we refresh. Okay, we got a different error. Okay, great. Again, I know why this is. Target app interface's user interface is not instantiable. Right, so what that means is it's trying to instantiate the user interface, but it can't. So how we've got to think of that, well, how does Laravel make sure that that interface works? Well, we know it goes through the IOC container. So if we go through to our service provider, we need to check to make sure that that IOC container knows our interface. So let's go to our provider. And there we have it. We've not told Laravel anything about our interface. So let's go there. And we do user interface. And then we've got our user repository. Great, let's refresh again. Okay, so we've got another error. Well, this is being fun, isn't it? Right, argument 2 passed to the app HTTP controller's event control construct must be an instance of app interface user interfaces, instance of app repositories user repository given. So what that's telling me is the construct is expecting the user interface, but it's receiving the user repository in the event controller. Okay, so let's go to the event controller. Again, I've probably made a mistake, as quite clearly tonight seems to be going that well. Okay, so event interface, user interface. So okay, this is saying an instance of app repositories user repository given. Right, okay. That one's baffled me. Not sure why we're getting this error now. Let's check our user repository. Okay, that's why. So we're not implementing the interface. So we implement the user interface. And there we have it. After a bit of debugging, okay, so we've not got the styling we want. So I need to go to Bootstrap. No, not Bootstrap. Get Bootstrap. And we go to the docs. We want version, say 4.6. And we go to forms. And we want a select. So there's our example select. So what am I missing? Form group, form control. So if we go create, form group. I've done form group. That should be control. Lovely mistakes today. Lovely. So let's do that. And let's refresh. And there we have it. So now we should simply be able to update this, select a date and time, and complete that. Okay, column not found. I think, did we not migrate? I think that's where we've gone wrong. So actually I should have already run that. There we go. So if we go back, we've still got all our data. So let's try again. And there we go. So we now know that that inserted just fine. So if we now go to our database, go to our events, and boom, there we have it. We know that actually we got a user ID which is belonging to a user. So I just realized actually we planned originally. Oh, we can refactor it later on then. But yeah, we know now that we have the relationship working. So let's go ahead and on our view, on the index, add a user. And we do user. And we just copy this for the header. Cool. And let's just copy that. And then we do event, user, name. Now, is this going to work? Because I don't think I set up my relationship in my model. So let's refresh. Nope. So we know that's not working. Okay. So let's go to our models. And models, user. Ah, there we go. So we've not set up our relationship. So let's do a public function. And we know an event can have a user. Right, and we're going to return. Got rid of this. Has, I think we can do a has one. And then the user belongs to, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head, to be honest. So let's go to the Laravel Docs. See, Laravel Docs are great. So, relationships. I think it's has one belongs to. One-to-one. Yeah, so it's a has one. So we know if, for example, let's read this. We know, yeah, we've got a phone and we have the user. So the user will have a phone. So we know the user has one user, which will be the user class, which will be the user, user underscore ID. We don't really specify the third parameter. Okay, why is that squawking at me? Missing function, return type. Oh, okay, well that doesn't matter, we'll leave that for now, no matter. So we can go public function is a user has an event, and then we return this belongs to an event, and that is linked to the user underscore ID. Now, theoretically, that should work. Let's try. Okay, column not found, users.user underscore ID. Okay, have I got this round the wrong way then? Quite possibly. Yeah, I had it round the wrong way. So for now, we know that we've got the relationship set up. Now, I know from my first video, we did plan on having an event can have many users, i.e. a users can attend the event. We can do that. I completely forgot about that. But we can do that. We can refactor. It's always good. Refactor, refactor, refactor. So that's it pretty much for now. What I'm going to do is in the next video, I'm going to refactor this. So we end up using the has many relationship. So a user can have many events and the events can have many users. So I'm going to refactor the code to work that way, and then we can talk through that, and then we can do a few little bits here and there. This series is going to take some time because the idea is we go through as much things as possible in terms of making sure your knowledge is covered right away across from doing the app, learning from your mistakes. Obviously, I've learned to do my mistake. I made mistakes and was learning as I did it again. I should have learned from before, but we all do it. We all make mistakes. So yeah, so this series is going to go along. So I am going to try and get out some other videos, some mini videos around real world stuff. So my next video is actually going to be around the database transactions and why you would use that in a real world. We actually are probably going to end up using this project at some point, but for now, that is what my next video is all going to be about. So please like and subscribe. If you're not enjoying something about these videos, let me know. I can take criticism. If you like something about it, tell me. I like to know I'm doing a good job. Like I mentioned before, if there's anything that you're having an issue with, let me know and I can try and do a video on it. I will try and help you as much as I can. But yeah, so please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next video. Thank you. Goodbye. So if we go through to our service provider, we need to check to make sure that that IOC container knows our interface. So let's go to our provider. And there we have it. We've not told Laravel anything about our interface. So let's go there. And we do user interface. And then we've got our user repository. Great, let's refresh again. Okay, so we've got another error. Well, this is being fun, isn't it? Right, argument 2 passed to the app HTTP controller's event controller construct must be an instance of app interface user interfaces, instance of app repositories user repository given. So what that's telling me is the construct is expecting the user interface, but it's receiving the user repository in the event controller. Okay, so let's go to the event controller. Again, I've probably made a mistake, as quite clearly tonight seems to be going that well. Okay, so event interface, user interface. So okay, this is saying an instance of app repositories user repository given. Right, okay. That one's baffled me. Not sure why we're getting this error now. Let's check our user repository. Okay, that's why. So we're not implementing the interface. So we implement the user interface. And there we have it. After a bit of debugging, okay, so we've not got the styling we want. So I need to go to Bootstrap. No, not Bootstrap. Get Bootstrap. And we go to the docs. On version, say 4.6. And we go to forms. And we want a select. So there's our example select. So what am I missing? Form group, form control. So if we go create, form group. I've done form group. That should be control. Lovely mistakes today. Lovely. So let's do that. And let's refresh. And there we have it. So now we should simply be able to update this, select a date and time, and complete that. Okay, column not found. I think, did we not migrate? I think that's where we've gone wrong. So actually I should have already run that. There we go. So if we go back, we've still got all our data. So let's try again. And there we go. So we now know that that inserted just fine. So if we now go to our database, go to our events, and boom, there we have it. We know that actually we got a user ID which is belonging to a user. So I just realized actually we planned originally Oh, we can refactor it later on then. But yeah, we know now that we have the relationship working. So let's go ahead and on our view, on the index, add a user. And we do user. And we just copy this for the header. Cool. And let's just copy that. And then we do event user name. Now, is this going to work? Because I don't think I set up my relationship in my model. So let's refresh. Nope. So we know that's not working. Okay. So let's go to our models. And models user. Ah, there we go. So we've not set up our relationship. So let's do a public function. And we know an event can have a user. Right, and we're going to return. Got rid of this. Has, I think we can do a has one, and then the user belongs to, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head, to be honest. So let's go to the Laravel Docs. See, Laravel Docs are great. So relationships, I think it's has one belongs to, one-to-one. Yeah, so it's a has one. So we know if, for example, let's read this. We know, yeah, we've got a phone and we have the user. So the user will have a phone. So we know the user has one user, which will be the user class, which will be the user, user underscore ID. We don't really specify the third parameter. Okay. Why is that squawking at me? Missing function, return type. Oh, okay. Well, that doesn't matter. It's just, we'll leave that for now. No matter. So we can go public function is a user has an event. And then we return this belongs to an event. And that is linked to the user underscore ID. Now, theoretically, that should work. Let's try. Okay, column not found. Users.user underscore ID. Okay, have I got this round the wrong way then? Quite possibly. Yeah, I had it round the wrong way. So for now, we know that we've got the relationship set up. Now, I know from my first video, we did plan on having an event can have many users, i.e. a users can attend the event. We can do that. I completely forgot about that. But we can do that. We can refactor. It's always good. Refactor, refactor, refactor. So that's it pretty much for now. What I'm going to do is in the next video, I'm going to refactor this. So we end up using the has many relationship. So a user can have many events and the events can have many users. So I'm going to refactor the code to work that way. And then we can talk through that. And then we can do a few little bits here and there. This series is going to take some time because the idea is we go through as much things as possible in terms of making sure your knowledge is covered right away across from doing the app, learning from your mistakes. I'll say, I've learned to do my mistake. I made mistakes and was learning as I did it again. I should have learned from before, but we all do it. We all make mistakes. So yeah, so this series is going to go along. So I am going to try and get out some other videos, some mini videos around real world stuff. So my next video is actually going to be around the database transactions and and why you would use that in a real world. We actually are probably going to end up using this project at some point, but for now, that is what my next video is all going to be about. So please like and subscribe. If you're not enjoying something about these videos, let me know. I can take criticism. If you like something about it, tell me. I like to know I'm doing a good job. Like I mentioned before, if there's anything that you're having an issue with, let me know and I can try and do a video on it. I will try and help you as much as I can. But yeah, so please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next video. Thank you. Goodbye.